and his wife are being sued by a high school girl who says she was sexually assaulted at their Palm Beach Gardens mansion. The accuser says this happened in 2021. The lawsuit accuses Norman and his wife, Kirsten Cutner, of serving alcohol to teenagers during a pool party hosted by her teenage daughter. The accuser says that the two boys, who had also been drinking, sexually assaulted her near the pool.
In 2024 and 2025, reports emerged that would finally reopen the door on a scandal that people thought had closed years ago. Greg Norman and his third wife, Kirsten Cutner, faced serious legal allegations. The lawsuit alleged that a teenage girl had been sexually assaulted at a party hosted at their Florida home. The reports claimed alcohol was served to minors and that the Normans failed to provide a safe environment. This was no tabloid rumor. These were court allegations that dragged the great white shark back into the headlines, but not for his golf game. This moment made people realize that the chaos surrounding Greg Norman's personal life never really ended. The scandals never stopped. And today, we're finally revealing the complete story of how one marriage, one betrayal, and decades of secrets led to a financial reckoning of over $100 million. Truth that Laura Andrassy revealed still echoes today. So if this story hits you, tap hype and give this video some love because you're about to hear how a carefully crafted image crumbled in real time. Let's rewind to where it all began. Greg Norman and Laura Andrassy got married in 1981. They were young. Norman was a talented but raw Australian golfer climbing toward stardom. Andrassy was a flight attendant with a quiet strength and ability to ground him. Together, they built something extraordinary. By the 1980s and 1990s, Norman became the world #1 golfer. Spent 331 weeks at the top, but behind every single week, Laura was there. She raised their two children, Morgan Lee and Gregory Jr. She managed the homes. She managed the logistics of a transcontinental life. She protected the brand. Jupiter Island, Palm Beach, charity galas, corporate sponsors like Rolex and Chevrolet. Everyone knew the Normans as the perfect couple, the fortress marriage, the stable family behind the aggressive, brilliant golfer. That image was worth hundreds of millions of dollars in endorsements and business deals. Laura wasn't just his wife, she was his co-architect, the silent partner who made Great White Shark Enterprises possible. For 25 years, she held that together. As Andrassy would later reveal, walls were cracking long before anyone knew. The perfect marriage was an illusion. Cracks were hidden, but they were deep. The pressures of maintaining a global business empire combined with Norman's aggressive personality and his relentless travel schedule were eating away at the foundation. And when those cracks finally broke open, everything fell apart. Public moment came in 2005 and 2006, but by then, betrayal had been years in the making. In August 2005, the Normans took a trip to their Colorado ranch. It wasn't just a vacation. Chris Evert, the tennis legend, was there with her husband, Andy Mills. Mills and the Normans were close friends. Kids knew each other. They vacationed together. Chris Evert was not a stranger sneaking into the picture. She was already woven into their social circle in South Florida, the ultra-exclusive enclaves where these people lived. But on that Colorado trip, something shifted. Laura noticed it immediately. The atmosphere changed. There was a gravitation between Greg and Chris that excluded everyone else. She described it later as unmistakable. Then, just 1 month later, in September 2006, the separation was announced. Just 1 month. Laura told people that things were great, and then suddenly, whoa, everything changed overnight. When asked about it, she famously said about Greg, "I know he is aggressive and works fast." That was both a reference to his style on the golf course and his ruthless efficiency in blowing up his marriage. What made this worse for Laura was how she found out. She didn't hear it from Greg privately. She found out through the press. She found out through her children. She was humiliated publicly, abandoned privately, and the woman who had spent 25 years building his image watched it crumble in a matter of weeks. Laura had a specific word for what happened next. She called it predatory. She said explicitly, she came after him. I have never seen anything like it. The word predatory was not casual. It carried weight. It wasn't a simple affair. In Laura's view, Chris Evert had aggressively targeted her husband, leveraging their proximity and their shared status as sporting icons to wedge herself into the marriage. Evert was unhappy in her own marriage to Olympic skier Andy Mills. Greg was ripe for pursuit, and Chris came after him. But here's what made this particularly brutal for Laura. When asked if she respected Norman, she smiled and asked the interviewer, "I have to answer that?" That question said everything. It meant the truth was too damaging for politeness. It meant she knew exactly who the villain was, and it wasn't Chris Evert. Laura blamed Greg entirely. She said, "My hurt comes from Greg, nothing to do with her." Evert was the weapon. Greg was the one who wielded it, and he did it fast, in secret, without shame. By June 2008, Greg and Chris were married in a lavish $2 million ceremony in the Bahamas. The media called them the Golden Couple, two titans of sport finding love in middle age. It was the perfect narrative, built on a lie. Laura refused to play along. She went public with the real story. She painted a picture of betrayal, deception, a woman she described as predatory for coming after her husband in their own social circle. The marriage between Greg and Chris was also fractured by family dysfunction. Laura's own mother revealed that Greg and Chris's children, particularly the kids from the first marriage, never warmed up to Evert. It wasn't a good relationship. The blending of families failed completely. Evert had 3 sons of her own, and the clash between 2 celebrity-centric households left everyone alienated and bitter. Then came the legal battles. Laura's lawyers tried to depose Chris Evert. They wanted testimony about trips she had taken on Greg's private jet before the divorce was finalized. They wanted to establish a timeline of adultery and prove that marital assets were being used to facilitate the affair. It was a power move by Laura, ready to drag the details into court, to make the entire sordid affair public record. But the judge blocked it. Norman's lawyers called it harassment. The court ruled that deposing Evert would expose her to embarrassing and invasive questioning that wasn't necessary. So the deposition never happened, but the very attempt showed how far Laura was willing to go. She wasn't going to let this pass quietly. She wasn't going to be a silent victim while they rewrote the narrative. Then came the financial reckoning. The settlement between Greg and Laura was extraordinary. Not just the amount, but what it revealed about their empire. The total came to approximately $103 million. $103 million. To put that in perspective, this was one of the largest divorce settlements in the history of professional sports. It wasn't just a payout, it was a dismantling of the financial ecosystem they had built together. The settlement included a lump sum of $50 million, immediate transfer upon signing. It included $30.2 million in alimony, but here's the crucial part. That alimony wasn't paid all at once. It was structured over 15 years. That meant Greg was writing checks to Laura right through his marriage to Chris Evert, right through his marriage to Kirsten Cutner, and beyond. The payments extended all the way to approximately 2023 or 2024, nearly 20 years, financial tether that kept them connected decade after decade. On top of that, there were the real estate proceeds. $17.5 million from the sale of their Jupiter Island estate, Tranquility. $4 million from a secondary Palm Beach property. The home Tranquility was a 7.4-acre oceanfront masterpiece listed for $65 million. Sale marked the physical erasure of their marriage. It was where they raised their children, where they built their life together. Greg had to liquidate it to pay Laura. There were also retirement accounts totaling $466,000 transferred to Laura, and over $500,000 for jewelry, personal items, art, antiques, and even a Range Rover. But one specific clause stood out more than any number. Clause about trophies. The agreement stated that all of Norman's golfing trophies would be inherited by their children. Not by future wives, but by Greg to display in his next marriage. Children. Claret jugs, the trophies, the memorabilia, they were locked away from Morgan Lee and Gregory Jr. Laura understood the psychology. These were the only artifacts from his career untainted by scandal. And she made sure that Evert and Kutner could never claim ownership of his legacy. It was a shrewd, cutting move. With over $100 million, Laura reinvented herself. She left Florida entirely. She moved to the Hamptons in New York, a deliberate geographical and social divorce from the Palm Beach ecosystem where Greg and his new wives lived. She bought a property on Wyandanch Lane in Southampton for $7.55 million. She tore down the existing structure and built an 8,900 square foot dream house. Later listed it for $16.5 million. It wasn't broken. She was rebuilding. She was proving that she could create wealth and identity independent of the Shark brand. And while Greg moved on to new wives and new business ventures, Laura's story of vindication was just beginning. The deepest betrayal, the one that reframed everything, came when Laura revealed the truth about Kirsten Cutner. Greg was already married to Evert when this bomb dropped. His engagement to Cutner in 2010, just months after divorcing Evert. That's when Laura made the revelation that changed everything. She had overheard a phone call between Greg and Kirsten in 1995, 15 years earlier. She said it was inappropriate. She said they were planning a rendezvous. She picked up the phone and heard them making arrangements to meet. Confrontation followed, and according to Laura, Greg vowed to end the affair. He admitted Cutner was not just a friend, but he promised to cut ties to save the marriage. Laura believed him. She forgave him. She let it go. But she never forgot. When Cutner resurfaced in 2010, it confirmed everything. Laura said publicly, "It was a hurtful time in my life. It's just that my children have to be around a woman who almost destroyed our family. Think about that. Her children had grown up with Cutner's shadow presence in their childhood, a woman their mother had identified as a threat when they were young, a woman whose grip on their father had never truly been severed, and now she was becoming their stepmother again, this time permanently. Greg claimed that he and Cutner had only grown close recently before their 2010 engagement. Laura challenged this publicly, said it was hard to believe. Reports from people close to the family supported her view. Both Laura and Chris Evert, despite their earlier animosity, found themselves bonded by shared devastation when they realized Cutner had been a long-term fixture in Greg's life. Chris was reportedly surprised and deeply hurt by how quickly Greg moved on to Cutner after their divorce. In her eyes, she wasn't the real love story. She was the distraction. Cutner was the endgame. Timeline itself told the story. Greg met Cutner in 1993. The phone call happened in 1995. Then there was the quiet decade, 1995 to 2005, when the marriage continued but trust was fractured and the facade held. In 2003, the Normans and the Mills, Chris Evert and her family, became close friends. August 2005, Colorado trip, the shift. September 2006, the separation. 2007, divorce finalized with the $103 million settlement. June 2008, Greg marries Chris Evert. October 2009, Greg separates from Evert. Late 2009, Greg is seen with Cutner. 2010, Greg marries Cutner. Laura's revelation about the 1995 phone call explodes into public view. The full picture emerged. This wasn't a sudden midlife crisis triggered by Chris Evert. It was a pattern, chronic pattern of infidelity and deception that had been going on since the early 90s. For years, Laura had protected their family, kept the secret, and hoped it would go away. But it never did. The settlement payments lasted through 2023 and 2024. That's nearly 2 decades of checks. Nearly 2 decades of financial obligation that tied Greg to his first marriage while he pursued his second, third, and whatever came next. The long tail of the scandal never really ended. It just took different forms. In 2024 and 2025, as we said at the beginning, new allegations emerged regarding Greg and Cutner's home in Florida. Party, teenage girl, alcohol served to minors, allegations of sexual assault, and a failure to provide a safe environment. Whether proven or not, these allegations perpetuated a narrative that Laura had been warning about all along. The environment around Greg and Cutner was chaotic, permissive, irresponsible. The home where her children had to visit their father was not the stable family she had tried to create. As Greg took over Eliv Golf, his controversial persona was under the microscope again. The same aggressive shark personality that built his empire had wrecked his marriage. In interviews near the end of his time as Eliv CEO, Greg reflected on his career. "I changed golf more than people realize," he said. That might be true on the golf course, but his legacy in his personal life is something very different. The public has a long memory. Viral photos, old interviews, comment sections filled with references to how he treated Laura. The scandal of Greg Norman remains a fixed point in his biography, impossible to escape. Over the years, public sentiment shifted. People who once dismissed Laura as a bitter ex-wife came to see her differently. She had been vindicated. Her specific claims about the timeline of the Cutner affair, about the difficulty of blending families, about the aggressive nature of Norman's pursuits, all of it proved true. Events unfolded exactly as she predicted. Exactly as. She took the settlement, invested it wisely, rebuilt her life, and refused to disappear from the narrative. She didn't fade into silence like the wives before her. She spoke the truth, and the truth stayed with people. Today, Laura Andrassy's story is one of resilience. She lost a marriage, but she didn't lose herself. Her children inherited trophies and memories of their father's greatest achievements, protected from the chaos that came after. She moved to the Hamptons, built new wealth, and established an identity completely independent of the Shark brand. And she proved that no amount of fame or money or aggressive personality can erase consequences. The truth has a long memory. Betrayal echoes across decades. Loyalty matters. And sometimes the quiet partner who everyone overlooked becomes the one whose voice outlasts everyone else. Laura Andrassy's revelation transformed how we see Greg Norman. It didn't praise him or defend him. It simply told the truth about who he was when the cameras were off. And that truth, finally revealed, changed everything.